all, e-vehicles, PVs, heat pumps, they will be connected to the distribution grid actually. So this is the one who really needs to modernize.
Already today, the power grids in Europe are overloaded, at least at times. The challenge of keeping the grid stable is growing with the increasing expansion of renewable energies, electromobility, and power to heat. On the one hand, technological solutions are available, but so far they're often used too hesitantly. At least this much became clear at the EM Power Conference 2022 in May. So what are the reasons for this? How can we accelerate the transformation of the grids into smart grids? And what role does the European market play in this? We'll find out in this episode. Welcome to the Smartery Podcast, a podcast for and with the creators of the new energy world. A world in which energy will be renewable, decentralized and digital, bringing together electricity, heat and mobility. Let us show you how we will get there and who will get us there. As always, we have a guest who's in a prime position to give you an insight into our today's episode. Carmen Gimeno is the Secretary General of GEODE, the European association representing the interest of 1,200 private and public energy companies for both electricity and gas in 15 European countries. Apart from that, she's also the managing partner at Verdia Legal in Barcelona. Welcome, Carmen.
Hi, hello. Good afternoon.
So, Carmen, at the moment, we're a little bit between the chairs. On the one hand, all of Europe has to stick together in regards of the war in the Ukraine, but that also means that some people fear that that war will slow down the energy transition. For example, because we have to replace gas with oil, etc. On the other hand, somehow, the high energy prices are now maybe raising the awareness of companies and consumers to save energy or to maybe start even generating it themselves. So, for example, with a PV system on the roof, etc. So, what do you think of this situation?
Well, quite a very long question, actually. First, let's start. It's clearly that we are at the moment living an energy crisis, which is totally unprecedented. And in this situation, of course, many questions arise. However, I am of the opinion that there is no regret and the energy transition goes ahead. Today, more than maybe even before, and if we want to reduce the dependency on energy, so clearly the coming from Russia, we need even to accelerate the energy transition. We have seen the goals to speed on renewables, for example, even more ambitious targets. If we already have agreed targets for 2030 of 40% of renewables, they have been increased now to 45%. And then, for example, in the Repower EU from the Commission, published last May, we have seen the goal to double, for example, PV installed capacity by 2025, which is actually tomorrow. So for sure, no question, the energy transition goes ahead even faster than we consider it before, and this is the clear solution. You tackle, of course, the very high prices that our consumers across Europe are living. Clearly, this is a critical situation we are experiencing, and we need a number of efficiency measures to try to somehow face with this. And from Brussels, from the Commission, certain measures have been already adopted with market intervention measures precisely to help consumers, and now have to be implemented across Europe by the member states. However, on the other hand, we have been talking for years, I would say, that the energy bill prices were not providing incentives enough to consumers to be active in the energy system, and we precisely now we have these very high prices, not probably as high as we wanted, but this is making consumers to look with interest to their energy bills and try to find solutions like an increase in the demand for self-consumption, for example, or developing the appearance of new actors like energy communities, which clearly are very key actors also to contribute to the integration of renewable energies to provide flexibility to the network.
Energy prices in Europe are a hot topic, and I think we could dedicate a whole episode just to discussing that specific topic. But let's maybe shortcut it in this episode, and let's focus mostly on how are we going to distribute this energy in Europe. Now, you represent 15 countries exactly. And at the moment, how are the distribution networks in Europe structured and organized? And are there major differences between the individual countries here? For example, are there some regions that are really ahead already with smart grids compared to others?
Well, here, maybe let's start with some figures about what we call DSOs, so distribution system operators across Europe. To put some numbers, for example, in electricity, there are approximately 2,500 DSOs in the European Union. And among them, there is a wide diversity. To give you also some details of those 2,500 DSOs, only approximately a bit less than 200 have more than 100,000 connected customers, meaning there are a number of few large players and a very large number of what we call medium, small size, more local players. Then also it depends a bit how the structures in the different national markets. So there are countries mostly in the South and Eastern Europe where you find like one or few players covering between 80-90% of that market, with then the rest covered by very small players. While, for example, more in the Nordics, you find, let's say, really a good balance in number of the players, which are numerous, but not such dominant players. Also, there is a diversity in terms of ownership, because they are normally publicly owned by the municipalities. That is the case in Austria, Germany, and the Nordics. But in other countries, they are privately owned. For example, the case of my home country, so is Spain. So, as you see, then some of them operate only electricity grids, others do both electricity, gas, and also heating in many countries. So you see, we cannot say one size fits all for the distribution networks. When it comes for the implementation of smart grids, since the last decade at least, that the distribution networks, they are preparing, they are modernizing and digitalizing. This is absolutely needed and critical if we want to face the challenges that the new energy system, which we will have in a absolutely more decentralized and giving more relevance role to the distribution grids. We want to keep operating efficiently and keeping the lights on 24/7, which is our core activity and also obligation. Probably a first step towards a smart grid is a smart meter, and since already the directive adopted in 2009 was come with the obligation for member states to roll out the smart meters if they perform a cost-benefit analysis, and it was positive. So nowadays we can tell that there are many countries in the European Union which have already finalized the rollout of smart meters. It is the case, for example, of Spain, Sweden, Finland, Italy, and others are almost there, like Denmark, Estonia already finalized it as well. However, there are other large important countries, like, for example, Germany, which is not the case, and they haven't done so. And they are facing actually some problems if they want to really develop with many of the new distributed resources in our grid and operate with flexibility services, etc. However, this needs huge investments in the distribution grids, and not always the regulators who rule for our grids and the remuneration of DSOs understand the need of such investments.
All right, yes, I'm afraid that Germany really is lacking behind, and then that on the long run will create some problems. But it's good to hear other countries are well ahead already. So you mentioned problems. I assume they could arise, for example, because we will see an increasing number of heat pumps, electric cars, decentralized PV being part of the system in the next few years already. And this all needs to be integrated into the distribution grid. So are the grids up to the task? And if not, what are the most urgent tasks to get them there?
Yeah, exactly. This really goes hand in hand with the previous question. I mean, the grids are preparing for the new challenges, as you are saying, because e-vehicles, PPEs, heat pumps, they will be connected to the distribution grid actually. So this is the one who really needs to modernize. And I was mentioning, according to this study from by the end of 2020, for example, it tells that there would be a need of approximately 400 billion euros up to 2030 to and 1/3 of this amount will go to the modernization of the grid, so to make our grids more smart. Some countries are a bit ahead compared to others. I could say that, for example, if we take the European Union, probably Scandinavian countries and the Netherlands are ahead of this digitalization. Also, the UK, for example, is a very good example of this.
We see there's a big need. There's also a big bill attached. So what are the most urgent tasks that we need to use the money on in order to make our grids ready?
Exactly, you talk about the money. So the main barrier is probably to get the sufficient revenues to do the necessary investments. And this is up to the national regulatory authorities, that they should, through the regime which establishes the methodology for the remuneration of the distribution system operators, because the distribution is a regulated activities, there should be enough incentives for them to invest in the digitalization of the networks. We need to think, these challenges are coming. There are already countries, for example, if you take Norway, is a leading country, not only in Europe, in the world, on the development of e-vehicles. They are already seeing how this is impacting in the grid, when even not a huge number, but a concentration of those in a certain area are charging at the same time. So for that, we need to already prepare our grids today for the very, very upcoming future developments, if we don't want to suffer security of supply issues.
So is it just down to digitalization, or are there also some hardware adjustments necessary?
Well, is it both? Of course, we also need investments in capacity for our grids. We talk also a lot about flexibility solutions, which will help to somehow mitigate or reduce these investments in what we call copper, but flexibility will not always necessarily replace the needed investments in grids, in transformers, etc. But also, if we want, it's the chicken and egg problem, because if we want to use flexibility solutions, we need to have more observability and better monitoring of our grids to be able to operate with this flexibility. And this will happen in the transformers, which are the ones, let's say, that we have to make them become more smarter, and so the DSO can operate the grid with near real-time information of what is happening in the grid.
Speaking of DSO and TSOs, I think they probably have to cooperate much more closely in the future to both enable a successful energy transition. So in regards to that collaboration, what are the main tasks involved, and what needs to be solved?
Well, it's clear that to strengthen cooperation between TSOs and DSOs is absolutely crucial. That means in many areas, starting from network planning. Network planning was, we should cooperate together. The TSO needs to know what are the plans for the grid of the DSO and vice versa. This is now at the moment even encouraged at the European level, but it should be also the case at the national level. Also, when it comes to data exchange for the processes, this is also absolutely important. Both need to know what is happening in the other grid. Actually, I have to say that this has improved, let's say, in the last decade significantly, from almost not to talk to each other, or at least not at an equal level. Now this is, of course, the cooperation is good, and recently it has been created at the European level a similar body as the one that ENSOE, which gathers all the electricity transmission system operators with clear mandated tasks by the European Commission. So a similar body has been created to gather the voice of all the distributors in Europe. So starting from Europe and then down to the national level, this cooperation is at the moment taking place.
So really being organized in one single body, streamlining the communication seems to be a smart move. Now, I mentioned the Empower Conference 2022 earlier in the introduction. I think one of the conclusions afterwards was that on the one hand, technological solutions are there already, but somehow they're not being implemented fast enough, at least. So in your eyes, what is really the biggest roadblock for smart grids? Is it the lack of regulations in Europe or on a national level? Is it outdated structures? Is it a lack of investment? What do you see as the major roadblock?
Probably it's a mix of what you have pointed out. It's not only one thing, but you mentioned, for example, the case of Germany, lagging behind in the development of local flexibility markets, for example. And this I mentioned before, there are no smart meters roll out in Germany, or not in general in the whole country. So this, of course, is a clear barrier for these developments. Also legislation, the Article 32 of the Electricity Directive about flexibility has not been transposed or implemented in, I would say, most of the EU countries at the moment. So this clearly doesn't help, because the rules are not on the table. You see certain principles, provisions, but not the full implementation there. Not only that, operational rules are also missing. Finally, now, before the summer, the Commission mandated ACER. ACER is the Agency of European Regulators, to prepare what is called framework guidelines for the development of a new code on demand response, which will deal with this flexibility and which will establish the operational rules for flexibility, some principles about the products, about pre-qualification, etc., etc. Here, the TSOs through the ENSOE and the DSOs through the EU DSO entity will work together to develop this code. But still, it will take, these processes are not precisely fast, so it will take still at least 1.5 years in the best of cases to be adopted and be then enforced in the different member states. We see, however, some developments also at the national level.
Now, 1.5 years is a long time, specifically in regards to the climate tipping points. Now, I asked you about all the roadblocks, but I assume you are still hopeful. So maybe in one sentence, why are you still hopeful?
Well, because I think despite the legislative processes take so long, technology is there, right? And actors are there too, with a lot of expectations, with a lot of interest. And then we see how also the geopolitical situation is pushing for new solutions, for new developments. So member states themselves are also taking solutions, in some cases even faster than what is coming from Europe. So all together, I think we could have hope that this will develop in the right way we need.
Wonderful. I think that's a good statement to end with. So thanks a lot, Carmen.
Thanks very much to you.
For more information, visit EM Power Europe, the international exhibition for energy management and integrated energy solutions. It focuses on the efficient distribution and use of renewable energy, as well as energy management in smart and microgrids. Other topics featured are grid infrastructure, energy services, and operator models. Find out more at em-power.eu.